Look at this footage and try to identify which one of them is Bayern's main striker. You see, it's none of them. To find him, if we move a bit behind, the player you're seeing right next to his own goalkeeper, that's the striker. This is the same Bayern, whose striker is top of the scoring charts this season, and yet that same guy often seen playing like this, leaving the attacking zone completely empty. This is the unique tactics of Vincent Kompany, from having unusual build-up shapes to players roaming freely wherever they can. This is the same man who was coached under Pep at Man City, but his football looks far away from his teacher. So how unlike most of Pep disciples, Kompany's tactic is so different and unpredictable, and why Man City are targeting him to be the #1 replacement of Pep Guardiola? Let's understand in this video.
Mikel Arteta a few minutes ago just said that they've just beaten the best team in Europe.
When you compare both Pep and Kompany's tactics, Pep's usually looks clean to the eye, as you have proper shapes in every phase of attack, with every zone is covered by a player, and most of the passes are short and disciplined. But when you take a look at Kompany's system, it can look ugly at times. You'll see frequent empty spaces, more crowd in specific areas, and shapes that don't always make sense. As a result, if you compare Kompany's tactics with others, it still feels balanced, but slightly closer to chaos. For instance, they don't have an actual build-up pattern. Sometimes it looks like this, sometimes like this, or even this, where even the strikers are involved in the build-up. And the reason behind all this chaos is simple. Kompany has two main objectives from his team: space and numbers. And for that, he is so mad that he is ready to break every stereotypes. For instance, Kompany has this specific zone where he puts his highest emphasis to attack with the ball, but instead of overloading that zone with more players, you'll see almost no one there. As per him, in order to create space in one area, you first need to pull every object to the other side. And that's exactly what's happening here. Kompany has this 2 position in his 4-2-3-1 system, where they act as free players, so they can be seen dropping really deep, almost like midfielders. It's just like Enrique's PSG, where Dembele was that free player. But in here, Kompany doesn't use 1, but 2. To know the reason, as with 1 free man, you can drag 1 center back forward, while the other stays back to maintain a back 3. But with 2, if the second one isn't tracked, he will be free between the lines to receive the pass. This forces both the defenders to step up, leaving space behind. But here it gets interesting. Instead of the wide wingers inverting to attack that space, like PSG, Kompany instructs his full-back to run all the way up to take that striker position. You see, when a winger is already high, he has to make a sideway run to avoid being offside, but a fullback starts deeper, so he can simply make a straight forward run. This makes it much easier for the ball carrier to time the pass and avoid the offside trap. On top of that, this extra runner can outnumber the opposition fullback. But what if these 2 defenders decide to stay back and let the pivots track those free players? At first glance, this looks safe, but with no one to mark for them, the backline is only left to track the ball instead of player. So the moment Bayern enter the final third, with defenders still watching the ball, it becomes extremely difficult for them to predict which deeper player will suddenly make the high run. It's just like you haven't studied the entire semester, and suddenly your teacher announces a surprise test. So with no forward to study from start, the backline is completely exposed to Bayern's surprise moments. And to know how their surprise work, their final third tactics will answer that question. If you're enjoying this analysis so far and want more tactical breakdowns like this, let's press that subscribe button and the notification bell, as this really helps me to keep making these analyses for you guys. Thank you so much, everyone. When you look at the final third shape of most teams, it usually looks like this. But with Bayern, it's different. Instead of playing with a usual horizontal front line, Bayern's front line never stays in the same line. To understand the reason, let's say if you pass the ball to the wide player of the front line, if the half-space player is just beside him, in order to receive the ball, he has to make wide run so he stays on side. But here, because the half-space player starts behind the wide player, he can make a vertical run instead. So the ball moves forward and it's closer to the goal instead of moving away from it. Now as the half-space player runs higher, the striker deliberately avoids being in the same line by slowing his run and stay anonymous. This pulls the attention of his marker towards the higher runner, which then allows the striker to receive the ball comfortably without being caught offside. And this is where Harry Kane capitalized a lot and scored many goals from it. Here you can see, the winger was ready to make higher run, but then he saw the 10. So instead, he intentionally makes a deeper run, dragging the defender with him and opening up space for the number 10. And this is not just about clever movements. Kompany also uses a clever passing technique that is inspired by De Zerbi. For example, this one. Here, instead of passing the ball straight to that running fullback, Kane first played a back pass. The reason is simple. If he makes that direct pass, the Arsenal defense is already running back, making it easy for them to track the runner. But by playing the back pass, the defenders are forced to turn their bodies, and once they turn, they lose momentum. Now that final pass becomes almost impossible to contain, and suddenly, Bayern create a 3v2 situation. This truly shows how well connected every Bayern player is to each other. And this connection is even intense while they defend. For instance, here PSG tried to use the same strategy of Bayern, by dropping all their forwards deep, so both the center backs had to step up, leaving the full back to cover that space. But just as that was about to happen, the winger saw the center back moving up. This was the moment where he was instructed to drop back and maintain the back line, creating a 3v3 advantage. And speaking of PSG, Kompany's Bayern were the only team to defeat PSG at home this season, and this happened mainly because of this pressing style. A press that forces you to give the ball back to Bayern within 10 seconds. As when the opposition starts their build-up, instead of pressing high immediately, Bayern first stay deep and narrow, with one clear goal to block the central passing lanes. This forces the opposition to play wide, and as they move wide, Bayern quickly switch to a man-to-man pressing on that side. And this man-to-man press is so extreme that at times, you'll even see Bayern's defenders pressing higher than their usual position. So for teams like PSG, who love to use the opponent's press as a weapon, this completely locks them in and forces them to go long. And because of this, at one point, Bayern genuinely looked like they could go invincible, but suddenly, the red spots started to appear. But before we get into that, let's apply Kompany's tactics in a simulation and see how each player works under it. Kompany's Bayern start in a 4-2-3-1 shape, where these two forwards takes all the attention. Like, just look at their heat map. They can be seen almost everywhere. So Kane often operates between a false 9 and a deep-lying forward, while the number 10 is given the freedom to act as a free roamer. And the second most important ones are the fullbacks, who acts as extra forwards, so they can be set almost like wingbacks. But when Bayern are out of possession, you will see, apart from the number 10, all the forwards track back to defend. The reason for this is that during counterattacks, having a faster and more agile player up front helps more to beat the backline, which Harry Kane lacks a little, so he can act as a provider instead of receiver from deep. So the striker and wingers can be set in tracking role. While in defense, one of Kompany's defender act as a stopping center back, who can be seen pressing higher up whenever the opposition's forward drop deep to receive the ball. When we move to team instructions, you'll notice something interesting. Almost all of Kompany's settings are kept either balanced or standard, because when you play an unpredictable system, you want access to every color on the palette. But with so much creative rotations happening within Bayern, the creative freedom can be set as expressive. While out of possession, in order to apply Bayern's hybrid press, we will set a higher press and trigger the press as more often. And before the press, Bayern narrows themselves to force opposition go wide. So the pressing trap has to be outside. And we also turn short goalkeeper distribution off, as Bayern's forwards allow the oppositions to make the first pass while they stay back. However, like every tactics, it has its weaknesses too. As slowly many teams found a way to stop Bayern's dominance. Just take a look at this footage. The player who is following Bayern's fullback is not Arsenal's fullback. In fact, he is here. This is actually their winger. So when Bayern commit everyone to attack, the only way to counter them is simple. You make everyone defend. But for that, you need a really high energy and young team like Arsenal, which can do that. And when you have almost everyone defending, you can create an extra backline like this. Here, Arsenal managed to do exactly that in the first half. With both their lines staying intact with each other, they didn't engage with Bayern's random rotations. But this needs patience, a lot of patience, which is difficult to sustain through the full 90 minutes. Also, when you defend with two deep lines, the second line can focus on tracking Bayern's dropping forwards, while the last line focuses only on the ball. This creates a great combination that locks Bayern's fluidity. And because of these two lines that sit like bricks, it's obvious Bayern will send even more men higher up, like their attacking fullbacks. This leaves Bayern's defensive flank completely open. So during counterattacks, the pivot is forced to cover the full back zone while the actual forwards drop to defend the center. This makes their central zone even weaker. Just like this. In this example, Kane is forced into a defensive role, but with him not being an experienced pivot, he moved with the flow of the ball and didn't anticipate that the opposition could target the space behind the backline, which a natural pivot would read earlier and delay the run. As a result, if we take a step back and really look at Kompany's tactics, yes, it's still at an early stage and there is a lot of room for improvement. But what his tactics already showed us is that you really don't need a fixed identity or label to be taken seriously. You can use every color on the palette instead of painting with just one, which really makes them unique and unpredictable for the opposition. And that uniqueness might be a glimpse of what the future of football is about to look like.
I would love this team to communicate something that is maybe not so normal, and I think then people go home and say, hey, I don't think I could do this. It's quite special what they do.
But speaking of Kompany, there is another disciple of Pep who innovated a new way of passing style that is even more dangerous than tiki-taka, and it's spreading across modern football like anything. So what is this new passing style, and how Pep Guardiola became the greatest fan of this manager? Let's understand in this video.